Hi, welcome everybody. Hey, I don't know what happened right there. All of a sudden, I turned deputy dog. All right, welcome to, I'm sorry, put on my professional voice again. Welcome to Talkback, brought to you by the Mustard Seed Asian Cafe at Southgate Mall, Kootenai Creek Village, the maintenance-free active adult community in Stevensville. Call 777-5387. Dig It Excavating. They bring 30 years of excellence to your job. 214-4292. Transport Equipment, your headquarters for RV service, maintenance, and repair. Located next to the Axeman, call 541-9097. Oh, my goodness, what a big news day.
Yeah, crazy stuff.
Holy free holies. I got to tell you, you could have knocked me over with a feather when I saw this on From the Wires of the Associated Press.
Sparing no expense, as usual.
Exactly, we spare no expense. Okay, this is a story we've used all morning. In case you missed it, though, in case you don't listen to the Montana Morning News program and only listen to Talkback,
well, good for you, because we have more news than was read this morning. We just got an email from Mr. Paoli and a statement on that.
Right.
We'll get into that.
Allow me to. I'll read the AP story, and then John will. And by the way, we've already contacted the University of Montana. We have contacted the attorney for Mr. Johnson. We've also contacted Kevin McCrae with the Board of Regents.
Guess which one of those three wanted to talk and which ones didn't?
Yeah. Well, that would be probably Mr. Paoli.
That's the one we got worried back from.
Okay, so here is the story in case you missed it. And I quote, Montana will pay, now Montana I'm assuming means the state of Montana. The state of Montana.
It might be Joe Montana.
I don't know. Well, we'll pay a former University of Montana quarterback $245,000 to settle claims that a rape investigation against him was mishandled. District Judge Deanne Cooney approved the settlement between Jordon Johnson, the state, the university, and the Montana University systems. Everybody had to kick in. That happened yesterday. Johnson was accused of raping a female acquaintance in 2012. As you know, we covered that trial from start to finish daily. That's all over our website. And we even still have the verdict, in fact, that I will play for you a little bit later. A jury acquitted him in 2013. Johnson attorney David Paoli says university officials predetermined Johnson's guilt and then ran a biased investigation against him. The settlement lists 11 claims, and I'm hoping they're in that email, including violations of due process and civil rights, along with sexual discrimination, negligence, and destruction of evidence. Johnson said in a statement provided by Paoli that the university's misconduct made him and his family suffer unnecessarily. An attorney representing the state did not immediately return an after-hours call for comment. So that is the news story. Now we have some more of the rest of the story here. We got a hold of David Paoli. Now, if you remember, this is really interesting because the attorneys that represented Mr. Johnson, if you remember, were David Paoli and Kirsten Pabst, who at that time was
in the criminal case.
Yeah, in the criminal case, who at that time was in private practice. Okay. After this case was over, she ran and successfully won the post of Missoula County Attorney. So the organization was working against her in the Jordon Johnson case. She is now in charge of. So, okay. So just some dynamics there.
So you read the AP headlines.
Yes.
It says the state of Montana, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
This is the letter that we got back from Mr. Paoli. I will just read it. It is a little long.
Go for it.
You'll be the first to hear this along with me because I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, okay, go for it.
Okay. Statement regarding settlement with the university system, University of Montana, Royce Ingstrom, Charles Couture, and David Aronofsky. Jordon Johnson has entered into an out-of-court $245,000 settlement with the Montana University system, the University of Montana President Royce Ingstrom, former Dean of Students Charles Couture, and former legal counsel David Aronofsky to resolve all claims he has against them. The claims arise out of these individuals' improper and unjust treatment of Johnson when Johnson was falsely accused in February 2012, and Couture initiated a student conduct code process which he and Aronofsky unfairly ran. The parties engaged in pre-litigation settlement discussions with the Montana University system on behalf of all defendants through Commissioner of Higher Education Clay Christian and his legal counsel Viv Hamill. These discussions eventually developed into more formal settlement discussions, additionally involving Bill Gianulius from the Montana Tort Claims Office, as well as a private attorney hired by the university system. Although a lawsuit has been drafted on Johnson's behalf and was prepared to be filed, Johnson believed it was the best course to attempt to resolve the case before any litigation was filed and the claims formalized in court. The claims outlined in the draft lawsuit are the result of former Dean of Students Couture predetermining a false accusation as one of guilt and then proceeding to act as a biased investigator, prosecutor, and judge.
Wow.
In spite of being required by all rules and regulations to be impartial and to provide fairness and equal treatment in the process.
You got to remember, that's part of the student court process, okay? Which, by the way, is totally confidential. You're not allowed to look into that. That's one of the things that John Krakauer demanded from the university system, that they release all those records for his little book. So anyway, go ahead.
Former legal counsel Aronofsky oversaw, participated in, and facilitated Couture's biased and unjust treatment of Jordon Johnson. Engstrom reviewed and approved all of the improper, partial, and unfair conduct by Couture and Aronofsky. The claims that are the basis of the settlement include, and there's 6 claims here.
Okay.
1, violation of his 14th Amendment property and liberty interests. Number 2, violation of 42 U.S.C. 1983. And I have no idea what these annotated codes are. Violation of Title IX. Okay, I know that one. Breach of contract, breach of implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing, and spoliation of evidence.
That's destruction of evidence, by the way.
Johnson's attorney...
Or tampering with it.
Johnson's attorney, David Paoli, explained, quote, "These claims all arise out of the biased and unjust campus process Couture perpetrated, Aronofsky managed, and Engstrom approved when Jordon was falsely accused by an acquaintance. The spoliation claim involves the destruction of documents and emails from Couture's computer."
Ooh.
Dun dun.
Wow. Is it? I
Wait,
wonder. Is
do
the
we
server,
have bathroom servers?
I was going to say,
University
is the server kept in the bathroom somewhere? Maybe that's where Hillary got her server was used. I mean, they weren't using it anymore, so let's just send it over to Hillary.
You know, another thing.
Wondering, I don't know.
There's all this stuff is secret, right? The documents from the students, we can't see it. Well, what if someone went to Hellgate? I mean,
okay, so continue on.
All right.
Right.
Man, these things just keep piling on.
It's
the
amazing.
Conspiracy theory fest out
the
here.
coinkydinks are amazing. So go ahead. Sorry.
Quote, this is Paoli again.
That's why we're crack detectives around here.
That's right.
Hey, the chuckleheads are at it again. Go ahead.
Any student accused of wrongdoing deserves a fair and impartial hearing of the facts of his or her case, Johnson said. Officials at the University of Montana, people who were in positions of great power, were unfair and biased. Their misconduct made my family and me suffer unnecessarily, both emotionally and financially. Again, that was Johnson.
Right.
I hope that students will receive fair and impartial treatment in the future, end quote. Paoli added that the litigation process likely would have uncovered additional improper conduct and abuse by these administrators, most notably the records that had been deleted from Couture's computer. Quote, "We had already uncovered plenty of misconduct and abuse, and it was time to end this sad story," Paoli said. Quote, "Jordon has stood resolute and strong through all the accusations and abuse. He never missed a class and kept pursuing his degree without interruption," end quote. Quoting again, "No person, be they a college student or other citizen, should have to endure the bias and abusive unfairness Jordon faced at the hands of Couture and Aronofsky with the ultimate approval of Engstrom. It speaks volumes on several levels that 2 of the 3 individuals that were involved are now no longer with the University of Montana," Paoli said.
No, they retired.
Yeah.
Well, they retired.
Sure. But, I mean, they're still not with the system.
This is true, yeah. In other words, they didn't get fired. Yeah. They retired. So
sure.
So, anyway, just so you know.
Heck, got it out.
Anything?
They keep going.
Okay.
Okay, early in the process, the United States District Court condemned the university's actions against Johnson. This is from the United States District Court. Today's ruling is not a finding that the process employed by the university in this case is immune from legal challenge. Indeed, from a normative perspective, the process applied to Plaintiff Doe and the behavior of the university officials is investigating and prosecuting this matter offends the court's sense of fundamental fairness and appears to fall short of the minimal moral obligation of any tribunal to respect the rights and dignity of the accused.
Wow.
Man, I have not read any of this stuff before. Okay, Paoli said, quote, Jordan appreciates Montana University System Commissioner Christian's August 1st, 2012 decision finding Couture and Aronofsky's conduct improper, abusive, and unjust, and his reversal of Engstrom's approval for their improper tactics. This settlement confirms that decision and the findings made in Christian's decision. Among other findings, Christian found that Couture and Aronofsky's horribly abused Johnson's rights by predetermining the outcome on day one and unjustly changing the rules and abusing the process to ensure that predetermined false outcome was achieved. The final abuse of the process culminated with the approval of it all by Engstrom, which Christian had no choice but to reverse. Paoli concluded, quote, Jordan made the decision to settle his claims prior to filing a lawsuit so that he could get on with his life. Had he proceeded with litigation, there is little doubt the system and the university would have had to pay significantly more money in settlement or through verdict. But that was not Jordan's intent. He wanted to expose the wrongdoing and stand up to those who abuse their power and his rights and help to prevent this from occurring in the future. Through this settlement and Engstrom's apology to the Johnson family, Jordan believes his intent in making these claims has been met. We very much look forward to closing this matter, end quote. Final statement here, quote, I want to put this entire situation behind me and move forward with my life. I want to thank my family, friends, professors, teammates, coaches, and community members of Missoula who stood behind me and beside me through this entire situation. I will be graduating from the University of Montana with good memories because of them. End quote. That was Jordon Johnson.
All right, we're up against a break. We're way past a break. What do you think, Talkback audience? Is this something that you anticipated? Did you see this coming? Or did you think it was all done, and that not only that, but the whole Krakauer thing hasn't yet been decided? So,
and by the way, just so everyone knows, in sense of fair play, we have reached out to the university to get their talk.
Absolutely.
And we received a statement from Peggy Core saying that they had nothing further to say about the issue. So hopefully they'll change their mind on this and give us a statement. But
exactly. So just in case, when we come back, I will play the verdict that we still have in our files. We'll be right back. Oh, yeah. 721-1290 is our number. So glad to have you along. And so here, just in case you're wondering, ladies and gentlemen, we do have that verdict that I saved it because just in case, you never know when some of these things are going to come in handy. They will just pop back up again. So this is what happened in a crowded courtroom before Judge Karen Townsend way back in 2013 in February. It's almost 3 years ago.
We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn to try the issues in the above entitled cause, enter the following unanimous verdict. To the charge of sexual intercourse without consent, we, the jury, all of our number, find the defendant, Jordon Todd Johnson, not guilty.
So there you go. That was the response in the courtroom when Jordon Johnson was found not guilty. I was standing right there.
Who was crying?
It was his folks.
Wow.
It was his folks, and the woman who brought the charge was not at the sentencing. I think she probably got wind from officials that it was not going to turn out in her behalf, so she was not there. And so I remember writing a post on our website during the trial when I was listening to both sides of the argument, both the defense and the prosecution. I remember thinking, you know what? I have kids. I have a boy and a girl who both went to college. You know, these could have been my kids. You know, my daughter could have been the one who said, this person sexually assaulted me. My son could have been the one that had been accused. And I'm just trying to imagine the agony that everybody went through because of this trial. So anyway, so whether you were in favor of the outcome or not, it was just a horrible, divisive, not just for the University of Montana, for the community. The community was split down the middle, for and against, and it was a hugely divisive time. Not only that, but it also set the stage for Missoula, Montana, to be named, if you remember, the rape capital of Montana. John Krakauer wrote a book about it. As a matter of fact, he's still in court trying to get those documents that we just heard about, and he may not have been too happy to get them. Anyway, 721-1290 is our number. We'd love to hear from you. I realize we're kind of looking back in the past right now, but if you would like to visit about it, if you agree that this is a good thing, that does this kind of set the world back on its axis where it's supposed to be, or do you feel it's fundamentally unfair to the victim and to the university and to everybody else involved? Let's put it this way: would you have simply felt better if none of this had ever come to light and they had done it privately and it hadn't been splashed all over the news?
Well, and here's the deal. The things that I'm most concerned about were done privately.
Yeah.
What is this stuff about a secret server that deleted emails, covering up improper justice, higher courts reining in on this particular decision? I didn't know about all this stuff.
I didn't know about it
until
either.
I read this stuff this morning.
The thing with Commissioner Clayton Christian having to overturn some things that happened at the University of Montana, I'm sorry, I may be an ignoramus, but I thought myself to be pretty well informed. That's news to me, and I will be reaching out to. I've already got a call into Kevin McCrae, and I will also be reaching out to Commissioner Christian to find out just what's going on here. Now, they may not be able to comment legally. I don't know. But we're up against another break. So we went a little longer that first one. So
sure.
So 721-1290 is our number. If you would like to comment, we have guests coming in at 9:00 this morning. So we'll have to put this particular.
One thing I do want to talk to you when we get back to the break, Peter.
Okay.
Let you think about it, chew on it during the break.
All right.
Is the target of this statement from Paoli seems to be Mr. Engstrom. He mentions Engstrom, singles him out 4 or 5 times.
Right. Okay. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. 1-800-568-5309. Now, John King's over there.
I am about to post this statement from Jordon Johnson and his attorney on our website, so you can read it for yourself. I did want to get your response, Peter, real quick.
Okay, about...
What did you think about... I mean, over and over and over again, there does seem to be a target in this piece, and it appears to be Mr. Engstrom.
It would have to be, because when you're the president of the university, you are ultimately responsible for the decisions that the people underneath you make. That is part of what being a CEO or a president or whatever it might be. Even if you may disagree with or not, necessarily be fond of the decisions that the people underneath you make, as the head guy, it all comes down on you. And so that's naturally where the criticism, whether it's justified or not, that's where the criticism is going to fall, and you have to be ready and willing to say, okay, I'm going to take responsibility for it, even though I didn't necessarily personally do it. So, I don't know.
The thing that I thought was interesting, though, is the charges are more than that. The charges are that he personally made the decision to okay it, that he personally made the decision, and I don't know who's at fault for covering up the information.
Right.
But I mean, the charges aren't like, oh, you're in charge, so you're in trouble.
Right.
They're like, you did this, so you're in trouble.
Okay. Let's get Pete on the line. Good morning, Pete. You're on Talkback. Hi.
Good morning, Peter. And I think you're right on. I think this is a reaffirmation that our current president and his administrative team from the get-go have been making poor administrative decisions and have continued on with the way they're managing the institution. I mean, it's on and on and on and on, and then the collateral damage of a coach, an athletic director, and their family.
By the way, I want you to know I have reached out to both Coach Pflugrad and Jim O'Day, the two individuals who were fired immediately after the Jordon Johnson incident came to light. And I have left messages and done the best I can. We'll see if they will contact me. But I'm sure that I'm not sure whether they want to put it behind them. But I remember both of them saying that the reason they were singled out was because they stood behind this young man. Pflugrad, as you know, recruited Jordon Johnson out of Oregon. And Jim O'Day was the athletic director at the time.
Not only did Pflugrad recruit him out of Oregon, he knew this young man's father since he lived out there, and he knew Jordan since he was a grade school student. So he's very familiar with the individual.
Right. Hey, we're out of time. Thanks so much for the call, Pete. Really appreciate it. All right, 721-1290 is our number. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, we are going to shift gears after the top of the hour because we have a special guest from the Political Science Department of the University of Montana coming in. The super forecaster is going to be coming in to join us, and we'll be picking her brain about things that are going on all around the world. So thanks for joining us here on Talkback, coming up on 9 o'clock here pretty quick. Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome back to hour number 2 of Talkback, brought to you by Bulls Eyewear, where they offer some of the lowest prices in town on contact lenses. See Lynette at 2910 South Preserve. Nissan and Hyundai of Missoula under new management, offering rebates, discounts, at 0% financing on a huge selection of inventory. Located on Brooks near Southgate Mall, and by Selway Armory on Stockyard Road, with more guns and ammo than anyone in Missoula and the best prices in Montana, Montana's premier firearms dealer. All right, welcome everybody. Glad to have you back along. That's John King over there. John, we have a lovely guest in studio.
That's right.
Today.
We have the super forecaster. Karen's back in the studio with us. Thanks for joining us again, ma'am.
Hi, John. Hi, Peter. Nice to be here.
Good to see you. Where's your headphones?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
You didn't bring them with you?
Someone got a little tied up in the last segment. I've been writing it during the break.
It's been exciting around here.
Oh, it's been pretty crazy. So how are things at the University of Montana this morning?
One never knows.
I know.
And yet, life is much as it was at the university 30 years ago.
Yes.
We teach, students learn a thing or two.
Yes.
We wait for spring.
Yeah, and now that we are you're officially in spring semester, right?
We are.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now school lets out when? June, May, what?
Early May.
Early May.
Well, the last classes are early May. Then we have finals and graduations maybe the second weekend.
Oh, that's right. Because I remember the second weekend in May is the time when nobody can find a hotel room in town.
That's right.
Because everybody's here for graduation.
Mm-hmm. And Mother's Day.
Yes. Yeah, all that good stuff.
Nice gift to a mom to graduate.
So, welcome back. It's good to have you back again.
Thank you.
And I know that you are kind of the economic super forecaster.
Yeah, and politics.
Yes.
So I was watching this morning the news about China having put the surface-to-air missiles on the island near their mainland. Of course, there's some exciting stuff happening in Syria.
Russia.
Angela Merkel says we should have a no-fly zone.
In Syria. Which
yeah.
is something lots of people have said for a long time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And every day they say that. It's harder and harder to do it, right?
Yeah, it is. I don't know if Angela Merkel's going to put German fighters down there to enforce a no-fly zone. Didn't sound like it to me.
No. I think they were volunteering us.
Yeah. And Erdogan in Turkey is saying similar things. If only the U.S. had done that before. Personally, I'm not surprised we haven't done it, and I doubt we'll do it now.
I'm curious why you're not surprised we haven't done it.
Well, I think to really understand the situation in Syria and what we have and haven't done there, you have to look back at Libya. And what happened in Libya was so bad.
Because we messed up in Libya, it prevented us from doing anything in Syria.
You always sort of fight the last war, right? You implement the lessons that you learned the last time around.
You think after Iraq, they wouldn't have done Libya the way they did it.
Yeah, you would, wouldn't
you? Right,
you?
Especially since these are the big critics of the Iraq approach.
Well, I think often that people distinguish between things based on our intentions. And the rationales for Iraq and Libya were really different, but the MO was not that different. Well, I mean, in some ways it was. We didn't put ground troops in Libya. That was obviously different.
Hillary Clinton supported both. I mean, there are some similarities.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So obviously you've been following the political arena here in America, right?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Well, yeah, not as, I'm an international relations gal, so don't ask me too many hard questions.
Oh, who would the international...
The candidates.
So I was speaking with a Chinese student the other day at your university.
I should make you sign something before I come on.
Don't ask me. Here's the questions you can't
ask you X, Y, and Z.
So anyway, I was sitting. I'm trying to learn Chinese. I'm sitting down with this student, and I asked him, "Well, what do you think about American politics?" And he's like, "It's crazy." And he's like, "I don't understand who all these other people are that are not named Trump and Clinton and Bush. Those are the only three he really knew." He's like, so we're talking a little bit about it. But I guess my question for you was this: outside looking in on American politics, what do people know about this election cycle from other countries, and who do they like or dislike the most?
That's an interesting question. I don't know that we have anything more than just sort of anecdotal evidence about that. A reporter goes and talks to somebody somewhere, and then that becomes what we know. I was looking at some European papers yesterday, and it was interesting to see the sort of double talk that was happening, where there was a lot of talk about how scary it was to watch the American election because it seemed so disorganized and unpredictable, and also because there's a lot of American nationalism that we're seeing now that, suggests that the U.S. won't be as involved abroad as maybe it has been in the past. So to some extent, the Europeans are worried about that. But on the other hand, they kind of admire it. It's a lively scene. And certainly that's true of many Chinese intellectuals as well.
Uh-huh. So do you think, from what I've been able to tell, United Kingdom took up a vote to maybe make it so that Trump couldn't even enter the country. This whole thing is kind of getting out of hand, it seems, with the international process. I've never seen this sort of stuff happen with another candidate before.
Yeah, well, he isn't very elegant in the way he talks about foreign policy. I saw him the other day. I haven't been following the election very closely, but I saw him the other day talking about how we're going to beat Mexico. It's like, in what way are we going to beat Mexico? What does that even mean?
Well, I think what he may mean, if I just insert here, Ford building a huge new plant in Mexico, Carrier moving their plant to Mexico. There are businesses leaving America probably because of the business climate, the fact that our corporate taxes are the highest in the world, and they want to make money and and have a profit, so they're moving to Mexico where labor is a lot cheaper, and we could still sell their products in America. And so I think that may be where Mr. Trump is talking about the fact that, hey, we're going to beat Mexico to the point where maybe he's planning on wanting to, if he's elected, lower our corporate tax rate and maybe woo some of those companies back to America and employ American workers.
Well, that sounds more like developing an American industrial policy than beating Mexico. But it plays really well. This idea that the U.S. is down and out and we have to reinvigorate the economy and all of that. But, the way that it's being talked about in terms of foreign policy and international relations is a little nerve-wracking.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think it's productive.
The thing I find the greatest irony is, so Trump has this clothing line, right? I didn't realize that. Trump's had a lot of interesting endeavors, including Trump Vodka.
Here it comes.
Trump Airlines.
Here it comes.
But he has a clothing line. The ties for the clothing line made in Mexico.
And what's wrong with that? Yeah.
Well, what's wrong with that is he's a hypocrite. He's saying that all these companies are wrong. Ford, especially, he singled out, I believe, for going into Mexico and producing.
Carrier, they just made that announcement the other day.
Right, but then he does it himself. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, this is part of a long-term trend where American corporations have gone abroad to seek lower labor costs. And now there are a lot of foreign companies working in the U.S. and employing American labor. So an alternative approach would be to reward companies for coming to the U.S., regardless of whether they're, quote-unquote American companies.
Cool. All right. Karen Adams joining us this morning. We will be right back with more of Talk Back here in just a moment. So, by the way, all three lines are open if you'd like to chime in. We'd love to hear from you. It's 721-1290. Hey, we're back on Talk Back. 721-1290 is our number. Glad to have you along. Karen Adams joining us this morning. She's now political science department, right? That's your bailiwick.
It is.
All right. So I just want to make sure we got this right. I don't want to, because we have people on from the history department, we have from the administration. All right.
Political science.
Gotcha.
Not an oxymoron, right?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
All right. Let's get Craig on the line. Good morning, Craig. You're on with Karen Adams. Hi.
Hey, good morning, Karen.
Good morning.
I was just, I'm curious of what your opinion of this is. You know, the KKK has done plenty of heinous things around this country and are very, very unpopular, not only here, but I'm sure in Europe and everything else. But it seems like the Muslim community is treated a great deal more sensitivity than KKK is. You know, I just was curious of your opinion of that.
Well, go ahead, Karen. I'll let you respond, and then I'll cut it later.
Thanks for the call. So.
Well, I think, the Muslim community is a big place that includes people.
There's only 1 billion people. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That includes people who, are participating in politics in a lot of different ways. The KKK had a very specific way of participating in politics, and I think that's why folks try to distinguish between radical militant Muslims and those who are not. So I think it depends on who's doing how we should treat them.
Sure. What was the name of the guy that we had on a few days ago? I'm sorry. He's a language professor with the University of Montana's special language school.
Oh.
But he's a version of the Muslim faith. But
well, I know we've had Udo Fluke on before.
No. This is just 4 or 5 days ago.
Yeah, this is the gentleman from Morocco.
Yes. But I forget the name of the type of. Anyway, he was a Muslim, but a very different sort of Muslim than most of the people would think of flying an airplane into a building, right? I mean, It's just a big, broad spectrum of people out there. Thanks for calling KGVO.
Arborelia, I believe was his name was. Anyway,
I haven't met him.
Yeah, he's a brilliant guy. I mean, he's got more degrees than Fahrenheit. So, a very, very brilliant man. It was
Craig has a response.
Oh, Craig has
He's on line one.
All right, let's get
The
okay.
radio, I'll be right there.
We're right here, Craig.
Go ahead, Craig. What's up?
Not all Muslims are murderers, and no more than all KKK members were murderers.
All right.
But yet, we want to treat all KKK members as murderers, and we're, as I stated, we're a lot more sensitive to the emotions and feelings of the Muslims, whether they're radical or not.
Okay.
So, anyways, I guess that you can hang up on me now, John.
Okay. No, that was me. I'm sorry. I thought you were done. So
I think it was Marilyn who called in. He was a Sufi.
Oh, Sufi.
Okay,
thank you.
As opposed to Sunni or Shia or
Gotcha.
the other
All right. Let's get Chuck on the line. Chuck, hi. You're on with Karen Adams. Go ahead.
Yeah, with the political science, the social engineers rule. Anything you hear on the news is incomplete. If you're bringing Muslims to this country, it doesn't matter unless you know which Muslims you're bringing. Are they the ones that love making prostitutes out of Christian children and killing their parents? Are they the Muslims that kill the other Muslims because their Muslim belief isn't the same? Who are they? And they're not just Muslims. There's all these different little groups. And to just put them together and say, oh, not all Muslims are bad. I'm sorry, it's a really screwed up faith with a lot of problems and a lot of people with those problems. And back to social engineering and companies leaving our country and going away, that's all predetermined. No one's going to stop that or change that. Do you think Ford will get to sell cars around the world as they bring all the plants?
Hold on, Chuck. Hang on. May I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Who is predetermining that these companies are leaving? Is it the stockholders? Is it the president? Or is there some overall group like the Illuminati or whatever you want to call it?
You're on the fringe of making me into one of those weirdos, and I'll say,
no. I'm just asking.
We're just affording you the opportunity to do that yourself.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've sat down with the they people. I've talked with the they people. They're out there. And a good example is that the carrier company got $5.1 million in stimulus package to create jobs from our government. And what are they doing? They're going to Mexico to create them.
Okay.
Not an accident. It's really happening.
All right. Thanks for the call, Chuck. Appreciate that. We're up against a break. Mike, we're going to get you on in a moment. And we have two lines open. 721-1290 is our number, and we're coming right back.
That's okay.
Okay, we're back on Talkback. 721-1290 is the number. John King's over there. Karen Adams joining us here in studio with the University of Montana Department of Political Science.
And so Karen is famous as a... Oh, sorry.
I want to get Mike on the line.
Oh, yeah, let's do Mike.
He's been waiting very patiently. Mike, you're on with Karen Adams. Go ahead.
Oh, hi. Thanks for taking my call. I just finished a book called Eat the Rich. I can't remember the author's name, but he separated good capitalism from bad capitalism and good socialism from bad socialism.
Now, I'm sorry, Mike, was that Eat, E-A-T, the Rich?
Right.
Okay.
Eat the Rich.
Okay, go ahead.
And he did it in a really humorous way. I think one part of he talked about China, where the portrait of a slightly smiling man is on every building and public square, responsible for the possible death of millions and a huge social upheaval. And it was Colonel Sanders.
But seriously.
It's PGA O'Rourke.
Yes, that's him.
Humorist
excellent.
political author.
There you go.
Yeah.
Excellent author. But I was wondering if your guests could update us on Hong Kong. I guess there was a thing last week about some riots, and it seems to be a gem of free market capitalism, but if the Chinese start manipulating things, it could disintegrate.
Now, when did Hong Kong go back to Chinese ownership?
97, I think, late 90s.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
it had been under the British Empire before then.
Right, exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
and the British just left it alone for almost 80 years since the 1911, and even before that, they had just left it alone. The governors from England didn't really want to be there, and they just kind of let the people do their thing, and it grew haphazard, and free market capitalism went crazy. It was on steroids, where you could have multi-million-dollar corporations right next to a little, hot dog stand, and it
A KFC.
It was a free-for-all, but everyone succeeded. I mean, even the poor had the opportunity to go out and make billions if they worked hard and did everything right. But then also the billionaires collapsed down to hot dog salesmen after a while, and it was a real excellent example of how things played out. And now the Chinese they want to change it over, and I think there's some tension there.
Well, we'll get Karen to comment on it. Thanks for your call. So, what do you think about have you even thought about Hong Kong?
Well, you may remember last year about this time there were some big protests in Hong Kong where the youth were out occupying the public places. Remember that? With the umbrellas were the big symbols of that. And so the protests that Mike was referring to last week were around the Lunar New Year. There were some youth that went back out and started to protest again, but that's pretty much dissipated. I was surprised there wasn't more of it, and that it didn't get more media coverage, it didn't get more traction. Basically what's happened in Hong Kong is that the middle class and the elite commercial groups have basically decided that their future lies with China. They need the Chinese market. They need to put their factories in China. They need to sell to China. And so they are willing to live with a more constricted political system in exchange for the money. And, and to some extent that makes sense, given the way that Hong Kong developed as a very rich trading city under the British Empire. A lot of people have a very strong investment in making money. And so I don't really think the political situation is going to change very much. China has an interest in keeping Hong Kong very vibrant, and the elites of Hong Kong have an interest in staying part of China.
All right. So as you look at the world from your perspective, from political scientist, what do you think is the area that poses the biggest threat to the United States right now?
Well, we think of a threat as being something that comes at you from outside, right?
Right.
And so I'm writing a book about security now and the history of national security and human security and so forth. And, most of the time when people experience threats, it's more a strategic problem. It's like you haven't seen it coming. you haven't really prepared for it. You aren't resilient enough to be able to withstand, multiple threats. And so I worry mostly about the U.S. not having a sustainable long-term economic strategy to provide a good standard of living for American citizens while we compete with rising powers like China and, in a couple decades, India.
So what do you think it should do to alleviate your fears?
Well, I think that we should be more serious about planning for long-term, infrastructure growth. I think it would make a lot of sense to renew American bridges and roads and airports and ports to where we have state-of-the-art facilities so that we continue to be a place that major companies can easily do business, both American companies and international companies. If we don't do that, then we're not going to be able to host the big commercial ships that are going, from China into big ports in other parts of the world. And in the process of renewing our infrastructure, we could create more demand in America for American workers and for American goods. And we could reduce some of the inequality that is stoking all of this, partisan split within both parties for more American nationalism.
Sure. We're going to come right back. And Charles, I promise we'll get to your call in a moment. John's on the other line. We have one line open, 721-1290. We're talking about what's going on in the world, and, of course, right here in the good old U.S. of A. We have Charles, we have Dave, and one line open. Karen Adams joining us here in studio. We'll be right back. All right, we are back on Talkback. John King, what's my name? Peter Christian, Karen Adams joining us. I don't even know who I am. We were talking about the fact that my wife and I are going to visit my daughter in London, and you were giving us all sorts of wonderful tips.
Great city.
And I've already been told by numerous people who have spent a lot of time there, leave my fakey, silly, Lucky Charms accent at home because you don't want to offend people and get beat up.
I bet Droopy's still popular over there, though.
Well, maybe. I don't know. But perhaps I could try that on people.
I would recommend doing that.
Going down.
Okay. Let's get Charles on the line. Charles, you're on. You're on with Karen Adams. Hi. What's on your mind?
Thanks a lot. Karen, I'm not going to, I don't know if you're going to vote for Donald Trump or not, and I won't embarrass you by asking, but he says we just don't make good deals. And, way back in the Panama Canal, it struck me we didn't give it away, we paid it away. And the Iran deal now, it looks like we didn't get anything out of it. So I just wonder if that's true and if we can't do better. He says we're not winning, we're just so generous. I thought for a long time in trade deals, we should put in a factor there that it only holds as long as we don't end up on a big deficit balance at the end of the trade. Do you see something we could do in that respect? Is it true that we're just not good, politicians aren't good at making trades?
Well, that's a great question. Well, I would say that you have to, when I think about trade deals, I think about it in a bigger political context. So it's often trading apples for oranges. And it goes back to the way that the U.S. became a great power, in the World War I and then after World War II. Basically what we were doing was we were opening our markets to European and Japanese and other allies in exchange for their political support of our agenda during the Cold War. And so we were offering, we were engaged in a political economic trade and political military economic trade. And now the calculus has changed to some extent because our former adversary, Russia, isn't much of a threat anymore. Now, I know that will shock everyone since we're all talking about Russia right now.
Have you seen his muscles?
Yeah.
He's a very, very strong man.
Well,
that's
just
one guy.
Important in some domains.
On a horse. Maybe wrestling a bear.
With a tiger.
Just one guy.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Russian economy continues to go down the tubes. So anyway, as China has risen, the calculus has changed. And I think it was a really smart thing to conclude the Iran deal, because that means we can move some of our attention away from the Middle East and start thinking more about how we're going to compete economically with China. I think a lot of these deals have to be understood as ways of freeing up American attention and resources to focus on, things that are emerging.
Speaking of trade, what do you think of the not the Iran deal, but the overall trade deal that was just signed not long ago?
The TPP.
Yeah.
That's not finalized yet, Peter.
Oh.
Well, I think it's really important to listen to how President Obama talks about it. He talks about how it's all to compete with China. And, this is someone who is not that interested in a lot of respects in, pushing American power on the world. But he's been very clear about how this trade deal is not about primarily economics for Americans. It's about political military competition with China. And I think to that extent, it makes sense that we would have trade deals with small states and medium-sized states around China that are threatened by China. But I don't think we can evaluate them just in economic terms. I also think, though, that the TPP deal, has a lot of its own internal limitations in terms of, a lot of the liability issues and other legal issues that got thrown in there.
So that's going to be a big deal, right? It's already a big deal in the election. But when it comes to the Republican, whoever that ends up being, versus the Democrat, whoever that ends up being, both Bernie and Hillary are on the record now of being against TPP.
Right.
How do you think that will play?
Well, how will it play where?
I mean, to the general public, to the mass America, not the party insider or the partisan politicians, but the independents that you need to win elections in America.
Well, I think it's important to distinguish between the primary season and the ultimate, presidential election. And a lot of what's happening now is wrangling for voters within the parties, obviously. That's what a primary is for. And on both sides, the populist sentiment has really been strong. And, the TPP is not an agreement that favors workers in any country. So it makes sense that both the Republicans and the Democrats are going to find that their more populist voters are against the TPP. Now, if I were predicting what was going to happen to the TPP as an agreement, I would think that there will be some sort of trade agreement between the U.S. and the same group of states, and it will exclude China, and that they all have a much stronger interest in having this agreement than they have in the particulars of the TPP agreement. So I think it's important, as you pointed out, that the TPP deal is not a completely done deal. I think to some extent it will be renegotiated, and the American election will help with that.
All right.
Okay, we're up against a break. And so Dave, Catherine, and Tyler, I want to get you guys on when we come back from the break. This is a great discussion, and we'll have more with Karen Adams from the Political Science Department at the University of Montana when we return. Talk back, rolling right along. Believe it or not, this hour is just escaping us here. 721-1290 is our number. Karen Adams, kind enough to join us. Oh, I forgot your water. I apologize. It was such a hurry to get back. Oh, yeah. Why don't you do that? I appreciate that, and we'd like to treat our guests well, even though Mr. Host is an idiot. Let's get Dave on the line. Dave, good morning. You're on with Karen Adams. Hi.
Yeah, good morning. About Trump and Sanders' popularity, I think a lot of people believe that government has become for the people, for the rich, by the rich. And I'll give you an example of that. My wife's a CPA, and there's a new tax cut law just been passed by Congress that gives people who own 3-year-old horse races a tax break. And, how'd that get into the code? Obviously, some rich person gave money to some politician. And
you might say they were backing the right horse.
Right.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. Go ahead.
I mean, our tax code is full of that kind of stuff. And my wife goes crazy over all these special interests with money writing the tax codes. And I don't see how it's going to change.
Okay. Thanks for the call. So what do you think about Dave's comment?
Well, I agree. I think there's sentiment on both sides of the U.S. electorate that say this isn't working, and it's not working for the ordinary guy.
But
lots of evidence, lots of stories like that.
Well, the question is, though, how does, quote, the ordinary guy, I mean, this country was founded on participatory government, where the little guy has a representative. We go to our representative, we make our views known, and hopefully they will represent us.
Well, originally, that, I mean, not everybody voted back in the early days of the American.
It was landowners, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the state.
But that's an important thing to realize, right? That democracy historically, even in England and the U.S., has not been of and by and for all of the people, although that was sort of the idea that was written down, right? So it's a problem. It's a challenge when you have a free-ish market, and when you have a free-ish political system, and then wealth is distributed unequally. Because some people are more talented or have better luck or have wealthy parents who leave them money. There's a lot of ways to get ahead. And then those people end up having more influence. So it's a predictable thing, but what is happening is also predictable. That is, we learn more and more about it. People who are not benefiting to the same extent from the system are upset about that. And so that's causing some real problems for the mainline party candidates.
I wanted to ask you a question on that because it seems to me my parents watched their parents after an artificial boom, which was the post-World War II era. This huge amount of, devastation for most of the countries left America standing pretty good. We were a high hog and had a lot of influence, a lot of power. Then, building steam, we take out, we didn't take them out, but Soviet Union folds, and then we're left without an opponent. Another generation of artificial bliss for the American public. Are we now reaching a kind of new normal? I mean, I think it's Fareed Zakaria that talks about the rise of the rest, and everyone it's kind of balancing out now that these artificial booms have gone. Mm-hmm. Do you buy into that line of argumentation, or do you think America's lesser people that feel like they're at the short end of the stick really are at the short end of the stick because of failures in economic or foreign policy and not because of just this rise of the rest sort of shift?
Well, Fareed Zakaria's argument is not so much about, economic stagnation and all of that, but it's more about the distribution of power and capabilities in the international system. So the idea that, when the U.S. and Soviet Union were in 1945 were basically the two states that were still standing after World War II. And so, predictably, they worried the most about each other and competed with each other. And when the Soviet Union lost that competition and fell apart, as you say, the U.S., didn't have a sort of concentrating opponent to really focus on. But that's only part of the story. The other part of the story is that, the U.S. has a very small percentage of the world population and yet has had a very large share of world military and economic capabilities and production. And just simply as a demographic, story, the BRICS, China, India, Brazil, countries that have bigger populations that have moved through a lot of industrialization are just going to become more economically competitive. And as a result, they will be more politically and militarily capable as well. But I don't think that necessarily means American living standards have to go down. I think how we deal with that will determine that. And if we see everything that everybody does around the world as a threat to us and we start spending a lot of money on our military, then we're going to end up with a different outcome than if we see it as an opportunity for us to focus on our own well-being and, let others take care of their own areas instead of drawing us in and complaining when we do too little and complaining when we do too much.
Okay, let's get back to the phone. Catherine, you're on with Karen Adams. Go ahead.
Good morning. I'll comment on something that was previously discussed and then a question. Part of the problem in my opinion, is that we have a professional governmental class, i.e. the rule of experts, which, has been accumulating through the last century, which is increasingly out of touch with the rest of the people in the rest of the country. My question is about something else. There's an increase in the negative interest rates. The European Central Bank is looking at increasing its negative rate. Japan, Denmark, Sweden, Switzerland, they're all in negative territory for interest rates, and they're trying to stoke inflation and weaken exchange rates. This increases the cost of capital for borrowers and for savers. And so this is also a blow to central banks, and the U.S. Fed is flirting with the idea. So the central banks are running out of options to stimulate the global economy. What do you think the global political implications are for that?
Well, that's a great question, and that's a question, of course, that a lot of people worldwide are asking right now because, as you say, with QE not working as well as the Europeans and the Japanese would like, they're having to stimulate more and more with reducing interest rates. At the end of the month in Shanghai, China, there will be a meeting of the Group of 20, and I was reading some forecasts yesterday about that, and it sounds like the Group of 20, which is the largest economies in the world, will probably agree to engage in more infrastructure spending domestically, do more fiscal policy, in other words, to try to stoke demand. So you can do that in a lot of different ways. You could have a military buildup, right? That's basically how the U.S. got out of the Great Depression, was spending on World War II. Or you could have infrastructure spending for commercial purposes. You could invest in R&D to stoke commercial businesses. Those things are obviously much more efficient. You get way more bang for the buck if you spend money on the economy, on training workers and so forth, than if you spend money on the military. But one way or another, I think we're going to probably see more government spending worldwide, and the countries that do it primarily through economic means will get a bigger bang for the buck, and their people will see more economic growth.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. Tyler, we're going to get your call on in a moment. We have two lines open, 721-1290. Just a few precious moments left with Karen Adams. If you have a question or comment, give us a call. We'll be right back. All right, we're back on Talkback. John, you had a fascinating question for Karen.
Sure. So, Karen, we have talked in the past about China and Russia and India and all these big countries that are growing. And you just mentioned the BRIC countries. Mm-hmm. One of the things we haven't been able to talk to you about, though, was this rapid decline in oil prices. And I was wondering how that played into your forecasting. So I'll turn it over to the prognostication priestess to explain.
I knew there was a peep, an alliterative peep.
Yeah, there you go.
There.
Yeah, right.
Let's see. So I would say the most important change that's made is into the prospects for Russia. Once Russia started playing around in Ukraine and then this fall getting involved in Syria, there's been a lot of talk about Russia's back. And, of course, Putin would like that to be true. But the Russian economy really hinges on oil prices, and they do not look like they're going to recover anytime soon, despite Putin's agreement yesterday, with Saudi Arabia. Iran's probably not going to play that game. And anyway, there's a lot of other OPEC members that have been reluctant to agree to reduce production. You'd have to reduce production very substantially now to get it back to the point that it would make
because there's such a
money.
glut, right?
Yes, and everybody's filled up their reserves, and so it's going to take a long time for the price to get back up to a point that it pays for Russia to that Russia can engage sustainably in these military expeditions, for example. And I think that's one reason that Putin's been amenable to entering into some peace negotiations.
So
go ahead.
Prognostication priestess pronounces Putin putter.
Ooh, excellent! I like that.
Putin the putts. Okay,
Putin putts. Yeah. Putin puffs.
Let's pouts. Okay, enough already. Let's get Tyler on the line. Good morning, Tyler.
Hi.
What's up?
So your guest seems to me to be fairly anti-military spending. She brought something up earlier in the show about China placing surface-to-air missiles on the island they created in the South China Sea. They did that in the last few days. I almost fell out of my chair last night when I saw it on the news because of the fact that they now have the capability of shooting down any aircraft flying within 150 square miles of that island. And this all happens right at the same exact time that Obama is right now in conference with Asian companies at the U.S. Asian Leadership Conference that he's hosting here in the United States. And China says, oh, you don't invite us? Well, guess what? We're going to put some missiles on this island, and guess what? You can kiss our butt. So here we have a military acting up. We've got an entire country acting up, and we have people like your guest who say we need to spend less on military and build more roads. I thoroughly disagree, and I want your guest's opinion. Thank you.
Thanks for the call. So what do you think?
Well, I'm not arguing for not spending anything on the military, but I think that it's important to be in the game for the long haul, and having a short-run military competition is not the way to compete over the long run with a huge population and a growing economy like China. China's going to surpass U.S. GDP within the next decade. And Chinese competitiveness, given its economy and its investment in environmentally friendly industries and so forth, is going to be huge. So the U.S. needs to be ready for the long game, and playing these short games where we're trying to, check someone here and check someone there and, not let anybody thumb their nose at us, I don't think is a recipe for long-term sustainability of a much smaller American economy than China's.
We only got about 2 minutes, so go ahead.
Let's get another caller.
Okay, Alan, you're on Talkback. Hi, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. Karen, you keep talking about infrastructure spending and government spending, and I'm curious. There is not a nation on this earth, a government on this earth, that has money. Most of them are broke. Most of them are breaking up faster and faster. But government keeps growing and growing. Where is the money going to come from for all of this government spending?
Okay.
Well, that's a great question.
Thanks, Alan.
So, America.
2 minutes.
You might have noticed the American dollar's been strong lately. And even now, with all of the economic turmoil around the world, people want to invest in the United States. Municipalities can pass bond issues. There's a lot of ways to finance infrastructure spending that create investment opportunities for Americans and for people in other countries, safe investment opportunities. And the spending also employs Americans. I don't understand why that isn't seen as a good investment instead of just a wasteful, profligate use of money.
Well, here's the deal. I mean, a lot of us feel like we're buttering someone else's bread, right? I don't own the port. I don't have the ship. If the government takes my money to help the people that run the port, it doesn't feel like it's coming directly from the people that are profiting. Why don't the people that run the port or deliver goods to the port help pay the price of upgrading the port?
Well, they do, don't they? But, in many countries, big commercial enterprises that have the potential to employ a lot of people get investment help from their governments.
And China
we are competing with governments
to show for
like
that.
that.
Right?
Okay, but Mr. Spoil Sport James in here. I'm sorry, we're out of time. So, Karen, how can we find out more about your department at the University of Montana? What do we do?
Well, you could Google University of Montana Department of Political Science, and you can follow me on Twitter.
Ooh, wonderful. All right. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks.
Dr. Joel Wallach and Mark Thane both joining us tomorrow. Right?
That's right.
Right. So you'd be sick and tired of school. It's a joke there. Sorry. It's really bad. All right.
I laughed a little bit.
You guys have a great day. And if you're in the fog, be sure and turn your lights out when you get where you're going, okay? Have a great day.